Hi, everybody. It's Sonia, and welcome to Leadership with Sonia. And today I get to interview another remarkable, awesome human and leader who I have known for a very long time. Now, Shannon, we were talking offline about leadership and the leadership awards and Bianca Dye, and Shannon is the CPO at the Australian Digital Health Agency, and they are also finalists in our Outstanding Leadership Awards. I've known Shannon for many, many years. She is still the most beautiful, kindness. What else? How else could I? Approachable, warm,
Oh, thank you,
smart.
Sonia.
Yeah. So, welcome to Leadership with Sonia.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I can't believe I was trying to remember when did we first meet, how many years ago. It'd probably be way too many years ago for me to remember now, but I do remember, first meeting you in the office and just going, wow, that woman's got something amazing. So yeah, very, very happy to have kept in touch over the years.
And it's been wonderful seeing your career grow and the diversity of your career. And I know, though, throughout the time I've known you, you have been so passionate and committed to the people and culture space. And I do love your posters. You do have some great, I think I see there one around being kind.
Yes, yeah.
So, and it's very much about you. So let me ask, when you think about leadership, so you and I are passionate about leadership, and I know leadership is part of who you are. What does leadership mean to you?
Yeah, thanks. I really think for me, leadership has a few different aspects, but one of them is very much around how are you going to be true to yourself, and how do you know yourself to be able to not only lead others through the challenges of working in teams and big organizations and small organizations, but also how are you going to lean into your values to be able to demonstrate every day what are you doing? Why is it important to you? And, leadership has a lot of aspects to it. That means sometimes you've got to make decisions that are really hard, that impact people in ways that they might not always want them to impact, but it's how you work with them and develop the skills of those people working with you and making good decisions for your organization. So I've probably learned enough about leadership from the people I don't want to follow, as well as the ones that I do want to follow. So I think for me, I'm still growing as a leader, and I don't have one set leadership theory or leadership, mantra that I will always follow, because I'm always learning. And I think that that's an important part of leadership, definitely.
Yes, you can definitely learn. I love your concept of leadership and what leadership means to you, and you can definitely learn from people that you want to follow and you don't want to follow. But if you think about people that have made a difference to you in your career, does anyone spring to mind?
Yeah, I mean, I've been really lucky to work with some amazing leaders. So I had a chief human resources officer who I worked for at Brisbane City Council, who really did take me under his wing and show me what it meant to work in HR. So I didn't start my career as a human resources professional. I was a sports scientist. I worked in a gym. And I think the conversation that he had way back when was, well, what are you going to be when you grow up? And at that point, I was very excited to work in a gym forever, which, absolutely nothing wrong with doing that, and was very happy to do it. But he just opened my eyes to what else I could do and what else the opportunities were in an industry and in a profession that I really didn't know anything about at that time. And so he allowed me to learn. And having someone who's your sponsor, who helps you grow as a person and as a professional, that's a leadership trait that I've really wanted to bring with me along. So I try to do that with my team members, and, giving them exposure to things and bringing them along to things and helping them grow is a core part of what I do as a leader.
So, wow, that's really interesting, because I remember when I was at school, I wanted to be a teacher, and all my teachers had said to me, "Don't be a teacher." And I was thinking, that's a bit weird. Like, what? Why are you my teacher? I thought you were supposed to. And I never thought about a career in human resources, because that's how I started in my career in HR. I would love to know your story. Like, I didn't know about the sports science background.
Oh, wow.
That is amazing. I didn't know about that. So tell me a little bit about your story. I'd love to know more about your story. Share a little bit more about some of these interesting and wonderful things.
Yeah, amazing. Well, it's definitely not a normal pathway, I don't think, into the world of human resources. So I had a very sort of bumpy high school experience. I was really, really sick and in year 10. And so I didn't finish high school. So about halfway through year 10, I was in hospital for the majority of the year and just was too sick to go to school, lots of treatments, lots of surgeries. So I left school. And so my dream at that point was to be a phys ed teacher or a physiotherapist or something sport sort of related. And so I figured out, well, how am I still going to do that? I'm really goal driven. And for me, even as a 15-year-old, I was still stuck on, well, how am I going to get to where I have planned to go? Because that's all I wanted. That's all I knew. So instead of going back to high school, I joined TAFE and did a diploma of fitness, which I thought, awesome, I'll get paid to exercise. This is the best job in the world. And so that turned into getting into university to do my human movements degree. So I got into uni the same time that I would have if I'd done a normal pathway through high school. So I'm a very big advocate for kids not needing to do the normal, traditional pathway through high school to still get to where they want to go. So I could get into a science degree and do that degree first up straight out when I was 17, which was incredible, and was on that pathway to do that. Graduated in amongst all that, got married, did all the things that you do, and joined an organisation that had a gym and was teaching aerobics in their gym. I had done some full-time work. I'd worked with TAFE and was a teacher for the Australian Rugby League. So I did a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff with their athletes, which was great because it was sort of a bit of everything that I like to do. But I joined the organisation, Brisbane City Council, on the side to teach some aerobics, and they had a wellness consultant job going. And they said, oh, we'd love you to jump in and apply. And at that point, I didn't know what a corporate job was. I don't think I owned, black T-shirt, let alone black pants and a jacket to be able to go into an office. But it was just the right timing, and it really mattered having people who believed in me and saw something in me that I just didn't know existed, because I didn't know that type of job was a thing. And then just grew my career there. So only thanks to good sponsorship, good learning opportunities, I developed myself. So going back and, studying business subjects at university and trying to upskill, and following people around who were willing to let me, because I was like, well, what's that job? Tell me what that does. And it was a really eye-opening experience of going, well, what else could I do with my career? And that just turned into more leadership positions in that agency, and then sort of spread my wings to go into then state and federal government into HR roles. So very much learnt that it was put your hand up, give things a go, but also develop yourself. So if you don't, no one's going to give it to you. You've got to figure it out and learn. But I definitely learnt that there's not one way. There's a pathway that you can choose, and you've got to make the most of that to be able to sort of step into the things that you're passionate about. And I just didn't know what HR was, so I didn't know I could be passionate about it. But I learnt that, and now I wouldn't do anything else.
Wow. And I can see, or what I'm hearing from you as well, that curiosity was one of your superpowers. You were curious about,
Very, very curious about things. I'm very much well, why does it have to work that way? Or what happens if you do this? So it's probably the scientist in me trying to figure out how things work. Yeah, but it's a definite superpower. I like that term.
And also, I read that, which is also something that you and I are passionate. You're doing a neuroscience. Are you doing a master's in?
Yeah, doing my master's in neuroscience at the moment. So really curious about the intersection of, how the human body works. And so that's all part of, the brain and the central nervous system, and how things all connect. And then combining that with how do leaders make decisions? How do people demonstrate good leadership behaviours based on the wirings in their brain? So we've learned a lot about the brain in the last few years in regards to neuroplasticity and, just general exceptions to learning that we didn't think existed many, many moons ago. So for me, the curiosity continues in, well, what don't I know, and how can I apply that in the workplace, mostly to leadership performance and productivity. They're my current sort of passion areas.
Oh, I'd love to. We should jump on another discussion, and I'm going to pick your brain about all that, because I know so many people that watch and listen to my leadership podcast and lives are always interested in the neuroscience space. So we'll definitely explore that a little bit more as well. So it sounds like everything's kind of coming together for you in terms of like where you started and now where you are today. Learning more about that science space, and it is amazing, the neuroscience space. So I'm just so proud of where you've got to today. And for you, like, what do you think makes a great leader today?
I definitely think knowing who you are and why you are is really important. So I think, especially in the public service, there's a real element to leaving the place better than when you found it. So for me, leadership is really about having a vision, figuring out, well, what's your contribution? I think as public servants, that's one of the key values that we hold dear, in that we can really make a difference to society, no matter what job we're in, no matter where we work in the agency. And as a corporate enabling function in the people space, I think for us, knowing that what we're doing is contributing to society is just critical to the work we do. And as a leadership tenant, I think it's even more critical to not only understand that in yourself, but know how you can describe that to other people, so they can sort of either link into that, attach to that, and go, actually, that's where I think, or that's different to where I think, and here's the path that I'm thinking and what my contribution is. So I think for me, there's an element to stewardship, which is a really important public service value. But I also think integrity is a key piece to leadership that I've seen people demonstrate just incredible integrity in the people space, especially because so much of it is behind the scenes, and you don't always get to sort of know what all the back end looks like of a HR space, because a lot of it is steeped in privacy and steeped in that behind the scenes integrity. But knowing that you're doing the right thing when no one's looking is a really critical piece for me as a leader. And everything we've learnt about vulnerability over the past few years, thanks to Brene Brown, there's just so much of that I think we need to lean into as leaders, to think about. It's not about oversharing. It's not about being the person that controls the topics that are being talked about, but it's really about who you are as an individual and how you contribute. So I think for me, there's elements to how you act on a day-to-day basis that you can't hide from if you're a leader. The real you will come out, and you've got to lean into that.
You definitely have to lean into that. And I'm curious around, for you and your life, what's been either, and you can answer both, like what's been a time where maybe you've been vulnerable and it's made a difference in your career, and what's been one of your greatest learnings or lessons as a leader?
Yeah, lots of lessons, lots of things I wish I could, have a do-over on. I think especially when I was first learning or first in a leadership position, I made a lot of assumptions around how people like to be managed, in that, not considering how they liked to learn or what was going on in their world outside of work that might impact their behaviour and the decisions that they make on a day-to-day basis in their workplace. So for me, really big learnings in regards to how I engage with people, about how I was going to manage them, and not make any assumptions to say, well, this is the type of leader I am and this is how I'm going to manage you. Really leaning into the kindness element of, well, what's happening for that person? What is important to them, and how can I support them as their leader for them to get the most out of the experience, about the workplace, about how we do things in our agency. That's been a huge learning, because I think when you're a new leader, you sort of set out to go, well, this is the type of leader I have either seen or I've decided I am because I went on a course, and that's the type of leader I am. But I'm not sure that the situational adaptive part of our brain is developed if we haven't experienced all the things that could go wrong as well. So I think for me, there's a vulnerability in one, even admitting that. And there might be people who I've managed, 20 years ago, who go, oh yeah, she wasn't a good leader because she did X, Y, and Z. And, it's something that I continue to work on. And I'm just really blessed to have really great leaders above me. So the CEO of Australian Digital Health Agency and the COO, so Joanne Greenfield and Amanda Catamol, they're just exceptional leaders, and I can really learn from them and understand, I guess, how they work. And having strong female leaders who demonstrate kindness and courage is just a blessing.
Yeah, I think it's it's so wonderful to hear that, and it's so wonderful to hear again how you see leadership, because I agree. Like, if I could go back to my younger self, I'd absolutely say to her, "Oh my gosh, like, you come into this kind of space where you're actually in a traditional leadership role, and you think you know it all, or you think you know how to lead, and it's about it's about having that growth mindset and going, I don't know everything." And I have a question, actually. Someone that's watching has got a question. How do you set boundaries as a leader to your team? That's an interesting one. What are your thoughts?
That's a really good question. And I think a lot of it depends on, well, what's your current relationship with your team? Because I think there's different boundaries that you can set depending on who you're working with and how well you know them, how much you've built in that investment around what they expect of you. And I think there's no hard and fast rule, because it will depend on who they are, how they like to work, what's important to them in regards to what are the limits and the boundaries that you can share within your team. I think the traditional professionalism things apply in regards to conflicts of interest and making sure you maintain your professional integrity between yourself and your team members. But I think that the boundary thing is, there's no hard and fast rule. It's very much lean into the conversations and have those discussions openly with your direct reports and your team members to say, well, how are we going to do this? What are good boundaries for you? What does that look like? And it probably goes back to you as an individual as well. What are you comfortable with? What does it mean for your requirements of your organization? And what are you able to really demonstrate and lean into to make that meaningful for you and your team?
I love that. Such a good answer. As my beautiful cat Lulu decided to jump on the keyboard and press mute. I did hear most of that, though. I did hear most of that, and I think it has to be situational. Has to be individual people, individual, and also again those different relationships you have. I think, though, as well, it was a great, perfect answer. I think there's also an element of, and funnily enough, again, it's situational. I think if there is something, though, that you feel, even yourself as a leader, that you need to share and be vulnerable, because it's going to impact your ability to be your best self, and that could be. What's an example? Which, funnily enough, I just posted something today about it. My team approached me a couple of months ago and said, "Hey, you're not your normal self." And I thought, "What do you mean?" And then they were giving, and it took a lot of courage for them to give me feedback. And they're like, "You're so positive all the time, and you're so energetic, but you seem a bit irritable, and you just seem to be a bit tired all the time." And I thought, and obviously it was the M word, menopause. And I thought, oh, I better go to the doctors. And then I went and then I had to be really vulnerable and go, "Hey, thank you so much for actually giving me that feedback, but I actually need to let you know what's going on for me. So I might need your help, because I'm going through these changes. I wasn't expecting these challenges, because we're all very different." So I think that, again, you can still set strong boundaries, but I think there's also times where you need to kind of say, "Hey, this is what's going on for me. But also, if there's something going on in your life, that we can help you." Again, that's servant leadership. If we can serve each other and help each other, because I think COVID has also made us more, it's not like work life anymore. It's kind of like life. Like, it's like that we've kind of now, so Cheryl's just right. I found it hard to open up. I had this experience that I wasn't respected as a leader because I opened up too much. Oh, that's why I asked. So, yeah, okay. All right. That's a really good point there. Look,
It
it's
is really
always
hard.
It is really hard. It's hard to kind of navigate that, isn't it? Just to kind of get that. And it does, I think over time, I think it's building that trust and those relationships and just getting a feeling for, like, again, when you are sharing things, what are people's, like, how people are responding and things like that. So really good question. So thank you so much. And Shannon's probably one of the best people to ask these questions because she's so good at this space. So let me ask you this, right? In terms of, again, if you could say something to our future generations of leaders, those leaders that are going, okay, if I needed to learn to be a leader or learn to be even a greater leader, what advice would you say to the future generations?
Yeah. And I think this was always the thing I always wanted to know from other leaders when I was learning as well, around give me all the inside tips and what does it look like. And I think there's some really good leadership, I guess, concepts and ideas that I would encourage people to lean into and find out more about, because then you can help understand, well, what type of leader can you be and do you want to be? And then you can develop skills in those areas. So for me, leadership, like I said before, it's a constant learning piece. So I'm really curious about finding out about what different types of leadership. Why does the brain act the way it does when certain things happen? So you can lean into the decisions you do or do not make. So the first thing I would definitely say is be curious about the type of leader that you want to be, and then experiment. So talking to your team openly about, hey, I'm going to try some new things. I've been thinking about my leadership style, and these are the things that I'm learning about, and this is what I would like to try with you. And it might be things around how you communicate. It might be how you plan your day around productivity. It might be how you engage with them around coaching and what type of questions you ask them and how you think about their career development. Or it might be how you position yourself in a meeting in regards to your role in that meeting and where you can lean into the types of leadership frames that exist. And so I think all of those pieces are about trying things and getting feedback. So that's the other piece, is don't be afraid to ask for feedback. I remember sitting in with a mentor, and he was really teaching me about feedback and how it worked. And I was terrified for him when one day we were in a meeting and his boss started giving him feedback, and I felt sick for him because the feedback, I thought it was quite harsh and direct, and there was no sugarcoating it whatsoever. There was no positivity. It was just straight down the line. And I was really awkward because he was letting me sit in to learn about what he was doing, and it was a shadowing opportunity. And afterwards, he thought that something was wrong with me because he must have seen my body language and I was probably looking for an escape. And he said, "What's wrong, Dan? What happened?" And I said, "Oh gosh," I said, "I'm really sorry." I said, "Did you want me to leave? Or, I'm really sorry if that was awkward for you." And he said, "Well, why would that have been awkward? That's just feedback." And I was sort of blown away by his one reaction and my reaction being so polar opposite. And as we walked through it further and learned more about why, that's the arrangement he had with his line manager. He didn't want any sugarcoating. He didn't want anything outside. He just wanted to know directly, tell me what I did, tell me what the change needs to be, give me that feedback directly straight away. And they had that relationship where that worked for them. Now, it was not something I would do. It's not something I would want to be put in that position, but it opened my eyes to going, well, if the arrangement between those two was agreed to, it worked for both of them, and that person was comfortable and learning and growing from it, that's the lesson, that they had set it up for success. They'd done the work on their relationship to be able to say what worked for them, and then he got the most out of it possible. So I think there's a lot of emotional intelligence in that. There's a lot of resilience in that, but also a lot of trust. So the other thing that I would say is you've got to work on who the people are around you and build trust with them. And that is going to make your job not only easier, but the investment that you will put into building trust with others will pay off. I've definitely learned that the hard way, that if I don't have the right team around me, and if I don't have people that I can trust working with me, for me, around me, it makes your job incredibly hard and challenging. And sometimes, to be honest, it's not going to work for you. If you don't have trusted people around you, things don't get done, you don't have a good time at work, and it makes life really, really difficult. So I think they're probably the main sort of tips.
They're great tips. Look,
Yeah.
trust is everything. Trust is and also being able to have those conversations with really good intent. When the
Yeah.
intent is from a kind, good place, I think that is everything. So, that trust, and you know how you build trust. I'm a great one around kindness. I think that if you kind, and people kind of say to me, yeah, but kindness is like a bit of a weakness. I'm like, no, it's not. You can still be clear and be
Yep.
kind. You know,
100%.
it's a Brené Brown quote, but it is. It's like when you're unclear, you're unkind. When you're clear, and you're kind. And if people know that you're doing it because you actually really care about them, I think it's really important. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I agree.
so what's next for you? You're doing your master's in neuroscience.
Yep.
What else is on the horizon for you?
Yeah, there's lots of exciting things on the horizon. So finishing off that master's in neuroscience, which will be great, but also looking at a whole of public service research project around performance management. So really trying to understand, well, what is the perennial challenge around performance management in any organisation is going to be there. But I think the public service, we haven't nailed it. I don't know anywhere else that goes, yay, it's performance management time, and employees get excited about it. And so I want to understand what's happening, why does it work that way, how can we get more out of it? And then my main thesis, which will be a uni/work sort of thing, will be around how do we measure productivity in the public service. So that's, again, a challenge that probably we haven't been able to nail it. And I'm sure that there's people smarter than me who've got great ideas. So really looking to collaborate widely on that.
Wow.
And then the final one is, we've got a great team at ADHA, and building the capability of our people and capability team is on the horizon. We've made leaps and bounds ahead in terms of the work we've been doing, how we function as a team, how we trust each other, how do we have a great time together, and really looking to take us into that next step where we are leaders in the public service about the way we do people and capability.
Oh, I love all those different things that you're focusing on. If I can find it, I will search for it. It was many, many years ago. I went to a neuroscience summit in Sydney, and I remember he was like the global CPO of Juniper, and he spoke about the neuroscience way of them doing performance management there. And he said that they didn't call it performance management. They ended up calling it the Juniper Way. It was the Juniper Way conversations versus, because even from a neuroscience perspective, and you'd be all over this, is that even if you are a 5 out of 5, A plus player in an organization, and you still activates the threat response when you go into performance management or a performance review meeting. So it's like, how do you change the language to make it more, I'll try and find the research. I'm sure you're all over it, but it was just really interesting listening to the fact that it really changed the landscape of how performance conversations were done.
Yeah.
From a I love the fact that you're doing that with the public service. I'm sure anyone's listening or watching would, even in any sector, would learn a lot from that.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that, anywhere else in the world, any organization, if your net promoter scores were off the charts horrible, which they would be for performance management scores if we took that level, if anyone in the private sector or anyone in any organization had those low level marks for those things, they would instantly change it, because it has such a difference. It has such an impact on not only your retention, but the productivity that you can drive from those conversations. And yet we haven't nailed it. And I'm really curious about, well, why is it so hard? Is it because we're not measuring things in the traditional way? Is it because we haven't thought about it from the brain-based activations? Or is it that we're just not ready for the change. So there's some really interesting pieces about the neuroscience to it in terms of change and behavior, and which part of the brain is triggered when you say that performance management thing or ask people for feedback. Those are real chemical reactions. And so if we can think of a scientific way to get around that, or think about the best way to make the brain work to drive those changes, then I think we're using some real evidence-based theories and products that maybe haven't been thought of in the past. So, but I could be completely wrong, and other people might have already thought of them, and I'm just finding out now. So that's part of the curiosity. What works, what doesn't, but I'm going to need help. So yeah, anyone out there who's curious about how we do that, wants to help, drop me a line.
Absolutely. So you can definitely connect with Shannon on LinkedIn. And I know she's incredibly helpful and approachable. I have just loved talking with you today. I could talk for you for a lot longer, but we've already taken up so much of your really precious time. We'll definitely get you on again to talk more neuroscience. Is there anything you'd love to talk about or close off with today, that before we say stay kind and courageous to the audience out there?
Yeah, thanks, Sonia. And look, I really say thank you to you and your team for everything that you do, and really hoping and helping to spread that kindness from a leadership perspective. But I think the big thing for me is really around leaders knowing that leadership's a really tough gig, and the kindness needs to extend to yourself, and you won't get it right every time. And it's really important to have great connections and networks who can help you, and phone a friend and executive coaches and whatnot, to be able to say, hey, I need some help, I need to learn, and I need to make things better for myself and my team and my organization. So while you're looking after your team, make sure you look after yourself as well.
I love that. So true. Make sure you're looking after yourself. That is fundamental. Self-care, self-kindness, self-compassion. Because when you're doing that within, you're actually able to do that more outwardly, externally. So yes, thank you so much. And thank you for everyone for listening and asking questions today. It was an honor to connect with you. And I will be reaching out to you to send you one of my books to say thank you. And please reach out to us at Leadership HQ, anything we can do to help you as well. I'll see if I can find that wonderful research. And it was wonderful. And thank you so much for being part of Leadership with Sonia today.
No worries. Thanks, Sonia. Thanks, everyone.
Take care. Bye. Bye.
Bye.